there has been this oh moment. You know what I mean? I am not feeling great today. I have a headache, I'm tired, the temperature is not the best. What I want to do is just go through what I wrote down for the full moon and get into a tarot reading as quickly as I can. We'll see about that. I'm not really going to go too much in depth about the astrology of this full moon, but I will insert bits of it in here. In the tropical system, the full moon is occurring in Cancer while the sun is in Capricorn, but in the sidereal system, the moon is in Gemini while the sun is in Sagittarius. I focused more on the sidereal one because that is what I'm drawn to, but certain elements, certain facets of the reading will show up in both sidereal and tropical if it's strong enough, basically. But anyway, I think that a main theme that I've been focusing on for the past few readings is returning to the self. This was reinforced because when I pulled up the chart for the full moon using Central Standard Time, the ascendant is Leo, so the sun is the chart ruler, and those two are all about like the self. Free will is a big thing also showing up. I'm just going to go through the notes that I have here. The big conjunction down at the bottom of this, as you can see right there, we have the sun conjunct Mercury, conjunct Pluto, conjunct Saturn, conjunct Jupiter. And what this is giving me is a pressure cooker for transformation. You know, when you're in a pressure cooker moment in life, when there's just this really overwhelming sense of heaviness, but also like you feel like you're struggling against this heaviness because there's also this sense of urgency and frustration and agitation, knowing that things as they are not ideal, but not being able to materialize or construct the more ideal form. This pressure cooker basically is putting us into a position where it's asking us, will you shatter under this pressure or will you expand? I don't know if that's the right kind of metaphor for this, but I think you understand what I'm saying. There's this continuing theme of reparenting happening. In this full moon, Gemini full moon, the sidereal Gemini full moon, and with Mercury conjunct sun and opposite the moon, there is this emphasis on our emotional connection to our thoughts. To our thoughts, the way we speak about ourselves, the way we speak to ourselves, the way we conceptualize ourselves, how we respond to the thoughts we have. Some of the main stuff coming up that is associated with Cancer and Capricorn would be like showing up for ourselves, like as a parent would, because Cancer and Capricorn are associated with parents, not abandoning ourselves, or otherwise just caring for ourselves and taking ownership over our lives and taking constructive action. Those are very prominent in the reading in the chart itself because of this freaking wild conjunction. Like here we have the sun, Mercury, Pluto, Saturn, Jupiter all just like right there. There's also this theme of understanding the roots of our relational patterns with friendships, relationships, etc. What needs we're trying to meet and how we try to get them met, and also examining them and asking ourselves if these emotional needs actually align with our real emotional needs. Like, are we just taking in all the filler that we can, or are we actually acknowledging like what we need in order to feel nurtured and cared for? With the chart that I pulled up with Leo rising, the full moon is occurring in the 11th house. And what I picked up from this was that there's this understanding about where we fit in and how we fit in to a community, or how we fit in to society and to social groups that we're aligned with. It's understanding how we fit in, not for the sake of conformity, but for the sake of community. Essentially, feeling comfortable deviating from expectations, feeling comfortable having opinions that are different from what are expected of the people in your social group. Because when you fully embrace and allow these parts of yourself that you've boxed away and put aside and for the sake of being accepted, when you fully embrace those things, then the fear of abandonment and of ostracization is not as strong, because you know that when you are being your authentic self, similar people will be drawn toward you. And it's not so much about fitting in, but it's just about being yourself and being accepted as that. I'm not communicating this in the way that I had planned to, and that's because I did not try to write a draft for this. One of the notes that I wrote down was boundaries between self and other on a collective scale. It's about retrieving parts of ourselves that we were taught to reject, parts of ourselves that we pushed aside so that we could be accepted by other people, whether it's family members or friends or relationship partners. It's taking this uniqueness and creativity to become a beacon for others to be attracted to you. So it's this building or recreating the whole self by revisiting the traits, interests, and whatever else that we changed in the past in order to feel accepted. And as part of this, there is this exploration or this identification of the false self that we put between ourselves and others, even in our most intimate relationships. It's this false self that gets in the way between us and authentic, genuine connection. Like there's this persona, this costume that is dulling you. It's dulling who you are, and it's preventing true intimacy from occurring. And one of the ways that I think that we can start to identify what contributes to this false self is paying more attention to the things that you say when you're talking to other people. What are you trying to prove to yourself and others when you say certain things? Like, what identity, what characteristic, what image are you trying to affirm? Like, what do you say in hopes of being perceived in a certain way? And why? Why do you need to get this point across? Is it authentic to you? Or do you think that it is what will help you get accepted? Another thing coming up about these planets all together is just generally rumination, obsession over... It depends. It depends on where these are showing up in your chart. And I think that this rumination and frustration can be about people in the past who have affected us in strong ways, parents, old relationships, friendships, like really being really stuck on thinking about how those things affected you today. Thinking about it isn't getting you anywhere. That's the rumination. Rumination is when you have something on your mind and it's constantly there and it doesn't help. Oh yes, this is often described as stories that we tell about ourselves, stories that we tell to ourselves over and over, and stories that we tell to people that we meet, stories that we tell when things aren't going the way we want them to go. Like, I'm not able to advance in this area because of this thing that happened to me. And obviously, of course, there is like, yes, things do affect us, but certain things don't have to affect us as strongly as we think that they can. They don't have to affect us as strongly as we have allowed them to. These stories that we latch on to also become excuses. Incorporating the lessons in the archetype of Saturn is being honest with yourself about what is an excuse and what is a reason. And this fits in with the idea of actually having a sense of free will, a sense of power. And there are a lot of things that get in the way of our free will, and I'll only focus on a few of them in this video as they relate to the chart, as they relate to the full moon and everything else going on in the sky. This brings up the question of like, what do you say to yourself? Do you speak to yourself constructively or destructively? And has it helped you so far? Is it helping you now? And who taught you to speak to yourself that way? I would like to argue, and I'm pretty sure that this is the goal of psychosynthesis, I would argue that even this concept of what we say to ourselves, like when we berate ourselves, when we internally yell at ourselves for not being able to do what we want to do, I don't believe that that is actually ourself. That is not ourself. That is not you saying that. It's a voice that sounds like your voice and it feels like your voice because you've identified with it so long. And this is the Gemini full moon. Gemini, thoughts, words, Sun and Sagittarius, beliefs, the moon, emotions, conditioning, subconscious stuff. These negative and self-deprecating thoughts are not you. And this full moon might help many of us recognize even more thoughts that aren't actually our own. Like there are thoughts, but they are our thoughts, but they're not you, if that makes sense. Free will cannot be expressed if we are identifying with the thoughts and emotions that we have, just fleeting thoughts and emotions. If we notice a thought or a feeling that is holding us back or pulling us down, and we feel tethered to it as if it's like a anchor and it's pulling you down and you're sinking with it, free will cannot express itself. And speaking of all of that, there are all kinds of therapies, there are all kinds of techniques and like things that you can do that help, but for some reason there's still this rift between you and who you would like to be, or this rift between what you are currently doing on a regular basis and what you would prefer to be doing on a regular basis. I forgot exactly how this was described by the person who was explaining it, but one of the aims of psychosynthesis is to disidentify with your thoughts and beliefs. Thoughts, your beliefs, your feelings, your emotions, your body itself. Returning to this core, returning to the core essence of ourselves. And returning to and cultivating this core self is a very... I know I'm kind of all over the place. I just want I have things to say. I know that I wanted to do this before the 24th so that I could get stuff up in time. So I hope that I'm making some sense. I hope I'm able to piece this together in some way that makes sense. But essentially, what's really standing out to me in this chart is out of a desire to enact our will on the world in our life, we must return to the core of our being. And I think that with this full moon, and especially with the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction happening, I don't know, it's like a time of a bunch of ideas and revelations about ourselves leading to self-discovery, self-understanding. It's like there has been this oh moment. You know what I mean? Like it's not like a moment, it's a oh. Oh, that's what that is, you know? It's like this realization that settles inside you, and it puts to words something that you have known about yourself for a very long time, but for some reason just hadn't really set in. Like the understanding of it wasn't fully embodied, I guess. So it's this general theme of returning to yourself. It's also a new you that is emerging, that you're allowing to exist. So it's about finding the self behind the insecurity and the self-hatred and the self-loathing and the self-disrespect. I don't know. And if you can't find this self, then it's a really exciting time to create it. And this goes back into the past and seeing how you sculpted yourself in order to be accepted by others. And something that I want to add to the part earlier when I started talking about power, one thing that I want to say about power, or this sense of power, is how it differs from a sense of control. And I think that you'll know based on how the two feel. Control feels stressful, constrictive, tense, anxious, stressed. And there's this general sense of desperation if we lose that control, or the sense of desperation that forces us to try to cling on to that control. But power feels limitless. Eventually, it'll feel safe. Eventually, it'll feel effortless. But for many of us who have dealt with learned helplessness and also just a sense of powerlessness for such a long time, it does feel intimidating and it does require practice. And I think that this sense of free will, this sense of power, comes from not trying to control our thoughts, not trying to get rid of the thoughts that are holding us back, but to recognize that they're there and that they're not you. And they become sort of like just a jerk in the back of your mind, and you just continue to do what you want to do despite that. And that'll decrease over time, and with practice and with patience and with self-compassion. But I think that's kind of how this all comes together. Power, free will, and being connected with your core self, with your spirit, who you are and who you're meant to be. I think that's what this full moon is about. Oh, and one thing that I want to add is that this goes back to all the talk that I've done about the ideal self in previous videos. One of the main themes of psychosynthesis is to get in touch with your ideal self, and this ideal self is you. And it's just about bringing that together with the current you and allowing that connection to get stronger than your past conditioning. If you've made it this far, I want you to leave in the comment box below, what should it be? Comment below with a little heart emoji. I have a soft spot for the pink heart with the sparkles emoji. I use it all the time, so comment below with a heart emoji. So let's choose a deck. I think what I want to ask the cards is for guidance. Some guidance on how we can be ourselves truly and fully while being connected to the world at large, with society at large, and our friend groups and the communities that we're part of. Two cards that wanted to speak. The Emperor and Mother of Swords. She's Gemini moon, and this is Saturn. Yeah, that's the theme. That is feeling a sense of authority over our own lives through not controlling our thoughts or our emotions, but accessing the self beyond thoughts and emotions. The Five of Wands just like flipped up for a second while I was shuffling. I read the Five of Wands as a sorting through of, well, since it's fire, I guess, like a sorting through of our behaviors that serve us or that don't serve us. Five of Wands is not a fun time. I received the Five of Wands a lot when I was just beginning my healing journey. Boy, let me tell ya, it was coming up with Three of Swords and Ten of Swords left and right, Ten of Wands too. Like just this, the moments when you know that there's a light, when you know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, but you still can't see it. If that makes sense. Like, you know it's there, but you don't see it yet, so you just have to like kind of keep going, and you just kind of have to keep trying new things and keep incorporating the new habits, the new behaviors, the new decisions. Whoop. 10 of Cups. Oh wow. 10 of Cups. Emotional wholeness, emotional fulfillment. Something also that has been coming up a lot lately is meeting our own needs and being comfortable with ourselves. Nine of Pentacles. This sort of self-companionship. And I've been talking a lot about emotional wholeness lately as opposed to happiness. Let me find, I kind of want to find the post. And I think that this relates to the combination of the Nine of Pentacles and 10 of Cups. I shared and responded to a post on Facebook, and what I added in my caption of it was, there is nothing wrong with feeling unhappy all of the time, or even most of the time, 100% of the time, or 90% or 10% of the time. The idea that we should always be happy leads to more distress than the acceptance that we respond to our life and circumstances in different ways. In other words, we are taught to feel worse when we are unhappy because of the fact that we're unhappy. And this is a cycle that can lead someone this is a cycle that can lead someone who doesn't even have any neurological disorders to a life that is not fully lived. We shouldn't always be in a constant state of returning to happiness, because it can lead us to bottle shit up, bypass our emotions, and live an empty life. Accepting our emotions for what they are, listening to what they're trying to tell us, and communicating with others is essential for wholeness. Wholeness over happiness. We must risk misfortune and loss for the sake of something better. If we constantly strive for happiness, we avoid pain, and therefore we avoid growth. That is the Sun, Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto, Mercury conjunction. That is strength. This is at the bottom of the deck. Leo rising for the ascendant. Jesus. Let me pull one more card. Great. 2 more cards. The Magician and the Four of Cups. Oh, of course. Four of Cups. God. Wishing that our circumstances were anything other than what they are, preventing us, therefore, from feeling the abundance that is available to us. And that is such a fucking woo thing to say, but it is kind of a thing. One thing that I've learned over this journey is that it's the crying over spilled milk and not being able to get over it for like a week. getting in the way of your ability to take action, to be you, to do what you want to do. But the way that these showed up while I was holding it, I see this cat. I don't know what kind of cat it is. Is it a cheetah or a leopard? I don't know. It's like, this is the core soul self that I'm talking about here. This is not just the ideal self, but it is you. The you behind your dissatisfaction, the you behind your frustration with the way things are, with not being, your frustration about not being happy. It's like this core self is looking at the mind, the ego self, and deciding to take action despite the stagnancy that this dissatisfaction of the Four of Cups can bring. It's doing something about it, not because you... not waiting for you to feel like doing the thing. Kind of like, I literally did this today. Oh my, I was feeling like utter garbage, and I was like, I had planned to film this, but then as the day went on, I just kind of like started to just droop. Eventually I was like, no, let's just put on some makeup. We don't even have to do the video. Let's just put on some makeup, have fun with it, get the lights all set up. Let's just create the space for it to happen if it happens. Because I really did not feel like, I was not in the mood to record this, but then I just kind of allowed this other part of myself to take over, to just do the thing, even though I didn't feel like doing the thing. And I think that it comes down to not waiting for ourselves, our mind, our body, not waiting for that to feel motivated to do the thing, but just stepping out of the way and allowing the core self, the higher self, the ideal self, spirit, whatever, allowing that to take the action for you, but without giving your power away to it, because it is you. I hope that this makes sense. I feel like I haven't said everything that I want to say. Oh, I do want to talk a little bit, just very briefly, about what I mean when I say ego and ego self. I just shuffled the deck for whatever reason, and the Ten of Wands just is at the bottom, and that was the card I was mentioning. It's this specific card that I think of when I talk about the light at the end of the tunnel through tarot, or like as the spiritual journey and the emotional journey. When I talk about the ego, I'm referring to the constructed self, the self that we come to believe ourselves to be, and that we have a lot of resistance to changing and to letting go of it. I use ego kind of as the word for the persona, the character that we play, and it can become so ingrained in us that we think that that is ourself. The ego is who we believe ourselves to be, who we try to affirm ourselves to be. It is the self that we present when we're trying to impress somebody. And I think generally when I say the word ego in this kind of context, I'm specifically referring to the resistance created by our attachment to this constructed self. I guess the way that I want to close this is just by reminding you that you may have, throughout your life, stuffed away parts of yourself that you thought were not acceptable, but there are people out there who will love you. There are people out there who will love you for exactly who you are. They will love you for who you are down to the deepest, rawest part of yourself. And we can't experience that love if we don't allow ourselves to be our true self. So I hope that helps you. I hope that this video has helped you. Like this video and share it with anyone who you think might benefit from it. See ya.